Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial on how to use the OpenAI API. Today we'll be covering exactly how it is that you can use this new feature that OpenAI has just released, meaning its API. So let's go ahead and get started by logging into OpenAI. Here I'm going to click on the API section where I will go to the documentation. So you have to have an account with OpenAI in order to use this API. So if you don't have an account, go ahead and sign up. Once you have done that, you can go ahead and click log in, and this will take us to the page where we can go ahead and log in. Now the next step will be and we can actually see ChatGPT is coming to the API soon. As we saw in the previous lectures, ChatGPT is simply built on what is called GPT-3, which is a large language model. So let's go ahead and we are on OpenAI. We are going to click on Quick Start Tutorial. Now, if you want, you can go ahead and read all this, but what we're going to be targeting today is this building our own application. Since I use Python, I will be selecting the Python Flask, and we're going to go ahead and copy this first command. And what this does is that it clones the GitHub repository, which allows us to see the the code without the need to code everything up by ourselves. So let me go ahead and open up a window through VS Code where I will use the terminal. And if you guys are not familiar with VS Code, it is simply a program where you can execute code in all sorts of languages. And the reason I use VS Code is because you can use virtually any extension that you want and it will run it without any problems. Okay. So now we can see that it's actually cloning this repository into my documents. I believe it's downloads, and so now I can actually access these these code files without the need to go on GitHub and we can see here, as I mentioned before, we have OpenAI Quick Start Python. Open that, and now we have here's the code. Okay, so I guess it opened it on a new window. That is completely fine. We can, yeah, okay. So now the next step is when you use the OpenAI API, you want to be able to have an API key. And what that is just a way for OpenAI to validate that you are a user that is actually using their services and not a bot or a robot. So here we have this environment example. So the example doesn't matter. What you want to navigate to is, let me see where we have it. Here we're going to run this command, and what that is going to do is that it's going to create a, okay, wait, let's see, maybe I should run this one first. Just copy the entire thing. No such file directly overnight quick Python. I guess we are in quick start Python, so there we go. Okay. So once I'm actually able to run those commands, we can see here, like, we not only have dot environment dot example, we have the actual environment. And so this one is a simple example for you to see. Here you would put in the OpenAI key, but since it's the example, not the actual one, you want to put in this one. Now, the OpenAI key, how do you get it? Let's go back here to our documentation, and you can actually create a new secret key. I've already created 2 keys, so I don't need to create an additional one, but you will need to create one if you haven't made one. So you just click create new key, you copy it, and you would paste it right here. And the reason you want to do that is that you don't want to have the key readily available in your code that the user is going to be interacting with. So that's why we have it in this environment. And in the actual Python, we have a reference to the environment. So we have our OpenAI key is we get it from the environment, meaning right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put my own key, and I will pause the video so that you guys can see my key. Now that I have put my key, it is all ready to run. So we will go ahead and run the app. Now to run the app, you have to make sure that you have Python 3 installed, you have pip 3 installed, and so we can verify that using these commands. Let's go ahead and just copy and paste. Simple. And this is the main command, flask run. What that does is that it allows your entire code to run all the requirements without you having to like go and index through each of these requirements. Right now it's downloading a couple files that we saw here. We're installing the requirements.txt, so that'll take a second. Now we will go ahead and go to localhost, which is what Flask Run opens up. You can see here this is the URL. So if I copy and paste that onto my browser, here we go. That is my quick start. And now you might wonder where does the rest of the code come from? And here's the index.html. Let's actually open that on the side. There we go. So this is the HTML. We can see OpenAI Quick Start. We can see OpenAI Quick Start, which is this. And then, we have name my pet. We have enter an animal, generate name. All these different aspects of the text. And we have the CSS that works with this HTML. Okay, now let's go ahead and dive into what does the code actually do. So my app.py, what it does is that first it'll ask for the name of a pet. And so here, essentially like the higher picture idea is I give it an animal and it'll generate names for a superhero of that animal. So for example, I give a cat, generate names. And so here we can see how we generate the names of superheroes that are cats. Now let's say I pass in a dog. There we go. Here are the names that are generated. Now you might wonder, how does this work on the back end? Let's go ahead and take a look at the app.py. And so what we're doing is, and this is how it works when you pass in, something to it's a get and a post. So we're posting something and we're getting something in return. And the way it works is the request we're passing in is a post, meaning we're giving something to this text box. Then our animal is going to be the animal that is passed in, and that comes from here where that comes from this code where we say the input type is text and the name of the input is animal. Right now the placeholder is enter an animal, and we can see that over here where it says enter an animal. Now back to our app.py. Once we have the animal, this is the important part. Now our OpenAI dot completion dot create, what that does is that first of all it's using the DaVinci model, which is actually the best one that OpenAI currently offers. And what it's doing with that text.davinci is that it's passing in a prompt, and based on the prompt it'll give us an output. So what is the prompt? It is suggest 3 names for an animal that is a superhero. Now, whenever you're passing in something like this to GPT-3, since this is not ChatGPT, you want to semi-train it. This is called prompt engineering, and prompt engineering is when you essentially tell the model how you want your output to look. You give it an example, and from there, the model can quickly learn and pick up what it is exactly that you want. So, for example, here on this model, we're passing in the name cat, and then we're actually giving the examples ourselves of how we want the output to look. Now here we have a dog, and then same thing, right? We have like the examples, and then for the outputs, this is where the animal is going to go, the animal that we put in, and then the names are formatted in a capitalization way. So a couple things, the temperature, what that does is that for every input that you put, if the temperature is high, meaning closer to 1, then there's going to be a lot of creativeness, a lot of randomness. If the temperature is closer to 0, like 0.1, 0.2, you're going to get a more monotonic answer, meaning there's not going to be a lot of creativity. You're going to get pretty much the same answer every single time. So now that we know that this works, what if we wanted to, instead of 3 names for an animal that is superhero, so just 3 names for baby input. And so let's say we want to go ahead and get rid of this. Okay, so now if we restart that, right, there we go. And now I changed my prompt to say suggest 3 names for a baby that start with the letter then blank, and now that's what it does, right? It gives me 3 names. And if we actually like change the HTML to, instead of say enter an animal, we can go to our index and say enter letter name, say name my, there we go. So if I say M, there we go. And yeah, and that is a quick summary of how we can actually initialize this OpenAI API. And the applications of this are absolutely endless. You might think, can I make something that, suggests prompts for writing an essay? Absolutely. And that is a quick example of how we are able to use this OpenAI API and, generate an end example with it. Now you might think, what are the applications of this? You can, tell this suggest 3 prompts for an essay on, and you insert the topic. You can say, give me 3, give me 4, give me an idea of a business that relates to this much money that I want to make in this amount of time. And, like, it's really fascinating how you can use this technology to actually make the lives of others simpler. And that is all for today. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.